My daughter planned a family reunion for my 70th. I was so happy. Then the caterer asked, "The wake?" When I heard those two words, the tray of lemon bars I'd been carrying slipped right out of my hands and shattered on my kitchen floor. My own daughter had been telling people I was dying. She'd been collecting sympathy, collecting money, and planning to collect everything I owned. But she didn't know that I was standing right there, listening, very much alive, and about to fight back with everything I had. Good day, dear listeners. It's Isabella again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. Today's story is one that still makes my blood run cold, even now. It's about love twisted into something unrecognizable. It's about a mother's trust and a daughter's betrayal. And it's about what happens when a quiet woman decides she's had enough. My name is Eleanor Voss. I'm 70 years old, and I live in a pale blue craftsman-style house on Birch Lane in Savannah, Georgia. The house has a wide front porch with two rocking chairs, one that's mine and one that used to belong to my husband, Gerald. Gerald passed away 6 years ago, in October of 2018, from pancreatic cancer. We were married for 44 years. 44 years of Saturday morning pancakes, of arguments about the thermostat, of slow dancing in the kitchen when our favorite songs came on the radio. He was a high school history teacher. I was a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm downtown. We weren't wealthy people, but we were careful people. Gerald used to say, "Eleanor, money doesn't grow on trees, but if you water the right seeds, you'll always have enough." And he was right. By the time he died, between his pension, our savings, my Social Security, and the life insurance policy, I had a comfortable nest egg, about $420,000. Not a fortune, but enough to live on, enough to feel safe. We had 2 children. Our son, Mitchell, lives in Portland, Oregon, with his wife, Dana, and their twin boys, Caleb and Ethan, who are now 14. Mitchell is quiet, steady, dependable. He calls me every Sunday at 6 in the evening, without fail. Then there's my daughter, Vanessa. Vanessa is 43, lives right here in Savannah, about 20 minutes from my house. She has 2 children of her own, Lily, who's 16, and Oliver, who's 12. Vanessa's husband is a man named Derek Caldwell. Derek sells commercial insurance. He drives a black SUV, wears shirts with monograms on the cuffs, and smiles like someone who's practiced it in a mirror. I never warmed to Derek. Gerald didn't either. But we kept that to ourselves because Vanessa loved him. And what else would a mother do but support her daughter's choices? On the mantel above my fireplace, there's a framed photograph of Gerald and me at our 40th anniversary. He's wearing his only suit, the navy one with the thin stripes, and I'm wearing a green dress I found at a consignment shop. We're both laughing. Behind us, you can see the rose garden he planted the year we moved in. I still tend those roses. Every morning, I go out there with my coffee and I talk to him. I tell him about the weather, about the birds, about what I watched on television the night before. And for 6 years, that routine kept me whole until Vanessa decided to shatter it. The cracks started small, the way they always do. After Gerald died, Vanessa was wonderful at first. She came over 3 times a week. She brought casseroles and helped me sort through Gerald's clothes. She held my hand at the funeral and whispered, "I'll always take care of you, Mama." And I believed her. Of course I believed her. She was my daughter. But by the spring of 2020, things began to shift. Derek had lost a major client at work, and Vanessa called me one evening in April, her voice tight and strained. She said, "Mama, we're in a tough spot. Derek's income dropped and the mortgage payment is due. Could you help us out? Just this once?" I didn't hesitate. I wrote her a check for $6,000. She hugged me so tight I could feel her ribs through her sweater. She said she'd pay me back by August. August came and went, and I didn't mention it. What else would a mother do? Then in September of that same year, Vanessa called again. This time, it was Oliver. He needed braces, she said, and their dental insurance wouldn't cover the full cost. She needed $4,200. I transferred the money the next morning. She texted me a heart emoji and the words, "You're the best, Mama." No mention of the previous $6,000, no mention of paying anything back, but I told myself it didn't matter. Family helps family. That's what Gerald always said. In January of 2021, Derek came to my house alone. He sat in Gerald's rocking chair on the porch, which I didn't appreciate, and told me they were thinking about refinancing their house, but needed to show more cash reserves. He asked if I could lend them $15,000 for 90 days. 90 days, he promised. He even shook my hand. I went to the bank the next day and withdrew $15,000. I handed it to him in a cashier's check. He folded it into his jacket pocket like it was a grocery list. 90 days passed, then 6 months, then a year. I never saw a dime of it. When I finally brought it up over dinner at Vanessa's house, Derek laughed and said, "Oh, Eleanor, that was basically a gift. You know that." And Vanessa looked at her plate and said nothing. Not one word. By the summer of 2022, the request had become a rhythm. In June, Vanessa needed $8,000 for a leak in the roof. In August, she asked for $3,500 for Lily's school trip to Washington, D.C. In November, Derek called and said their car needed a new transmission, and could I cover it? $5,700. Each time, there was an excuse. Each time, there was a promise. Each time, I opened my checkbook because I loved my daughter, and I thought love meant saying yes. In February of 2023, I sat down at my kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bank statements. I added up every check, every transfer, every withdrawal I'd made for Vanessa and Derek since Gerald's death. The total was $93,400. I stared at that number for a long time. My coffee went cold. The house was silent except for the ticking of Gerald's clock on the wall. $93,400, and not a single penny returned. But even then, I didn't confront her. I told myself it was an investment in my daughter's stability. I told myself Gerald would have done the same. I told myself that love isn't a ledger. And maybe that's true. But what I didn't know yet was that Vanessa wasn't just taking my money. She was taking something far worse. The next wave of requests came faster and harder. In April of 2023, Vanessa sat across from me at my kitchen table, tears streaming down her face. She told me Derek was threatening to leave her. She said they were behind on everything: credit cards, the car loan, even Lily's dance class. She needed $20,000. $20,000. I felt my stomach drop. I told her I needed to think about it. She grabbed my hands and squeezed them and said, "Mama, please. If Derek leaves, I'll have nothing. The kids will have nothing. You're the only person I can turn to." So I gave her the $20,000. I transferred it from my savings account on April 17th, 2023 at 10:14 in the morning. I remember the exact time because the bank teller, a young woman named Patricia, looked at me and asked, "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Voss?" And I said yes, because I was sure my daughter needed me. In July of 2023, I had a dental appointment. I'd been putting it off for months because 2 of my back molars needed crowns, and the out-of-pocket cost was going to be around $4,000. But when I checked my savings balance, I realized I couldn't comfortably afford it anymore, not after everything I'd given Vanessa. So I canceled the appointment. I told myself the teeth could wait. I started eating on one side of my mouth. I bought softer bread. I stopped ordering anything that required real chewing when Mitchell took me out to lunch during his visits. In August of 2023, Vanessa asked for another $12,000. She said Oliver needed tutoring and there were back taxes they'd forgotten about. I gave her $9,000, It was all I could manage without dipping into my emergency fund. She didn't thank me. She just said, "I really needed 12, Mama." That sentence hit me like a slap, but I swallowed it. I swallowed it the way I'd been swallowing everything for 3 years. By October of 2023, the total had climbed to $122,400. $122,400 given to my daughter and her husband over the span of 5 years. Money that Gerald and I had saved over a lifetime of careful, disciplined living. Money that was supposed to carry me through my final years with dignity. And it was just gone. Vanished into a black hole of excuses and empty promises. But I still didn't know the worst part. That was coming. It came on a Saturday morning in January of 2024, January 13th. I remember because it was cold, unusually cold for Savannah, and I'd put an extra blanket on my bed the night before. I woke up early, around 6:15, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. While the pot brewed, I opened my laptop to check my email. There was a message from Vanessa with the subject line, "Mama's 70th birthday, family reunion plans." I smiled. My 70th birthday was coming up on March 2nd, and Vanessa had told me weeks ago that she wanted to throw a big party. A family reunion, she called it. She said she'd invite everyone, cousins from Virginia, Gerald's brother's family from Tennessee, Mitchell and his boys from Portland. I was so happy. I hadn't seen some of these people in years. I imagined Gerald looking down and smiling. I opened the email. It was addressed to me, but was clearly a forwarded chain of messages between Vanessa and someone named Raul, who ran a catering company called Southern Comforts Catering. Vanessa had probably forwarded it to me by accident, meaning to send it to Derek instead. The email chain was about the food for the party, menus, pricing, setup times. But halfway down the thread, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Raul had written, "Just confirming the setup for the wake on March 2nd. We'll have the memorial spread ready by noon. White linens, as requested. My condolences again for your mother's passing." The wake. My mother's passing. I read those words 3 times. Then I read them again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll down. Below Raul's message, there was an earlier email from Vanessa. It read, "Hi, Raul. Thank you for being so accommodating. Yes, my mother Eleanor is terminally ill, and we expect her to pass within the next few weeks. The family reunion is actually a memorial gathering, though we're calling it a birthday party to keep things positive for the younger kids. Budget is flexible. We'll be covering it from the estate." From the estate. I wasn't dead. I wasn't dying. I wasn't terminally ill. My last checkup with Dr. Anand Patel at Savannah General had been in November, and aside from mildly elevated cholesterol and the dental issues I couldn't afford to fix because I'd given all my money to my daughter, I was in perfectly fine health. Vanessa had told people I was dying. She had told a caterer I was already gone. And she was planning my wake while I sat in my kitchen, very much alive, drinking coffee out of a mug that said, "World's Best Grandma." Something cold settled in my chest. Not sadness, not yet. Something sharper, clearer. It was the feeling of finally seeing the full picture after years of looking at it through frosted glass. I closed the laptop. I sat very still. The coffee maker beeped. Gerald's clock ticked. And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't cry. I didn't make excuses. I didn't tell myself that love meant swallowing poison with a smile. I picked up the phone and called Mitchell. He answered on the second ring. "Mom, everything okay?" I said, "Mitchell, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your sister has been telling people I'm dead." There was silence on the line for a long time. Then Mitchell said, "Tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the money, the $93,400 that had grown to $122,400. I told him about the excuses, the tears, the promises. I told him about Derek sitting in Gerald's chair. I told him about the email, the caterer, the wake. When I finished, Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, very calmly, Mom, don't touch anything. Don't delete that email. Don't call Vanessa. I'm booking a flight tonight. And tomorrow, we're going to find you a lawyer. Mitchell arrived in Savannah on Monday, January 15th at 3:22 in the afternoon. He came straight from the airport to my house. He looked tired, but his jaw was set in a way that reminded me so much of Gerald, it made my chest ache. He sat at my kitchen table, and I spread out every bank statement, every canceled check, every text message I'd saved from Vanessa and Derek. I'd printed the email chain from the caterer. I'd even gone through my phone and screenshotted every message where Vanessa had asked for money with promises to repay. Mitchell stared at the pile of paper on the table. He ran his hands through his hair. $122,000, Mom. That's almost a third of everything you had. I know, I said, and she told a caterer you were dead. Dying, I corrected. She said I was dying. Same thing, Mitchell said. She's already spending the estate, your estate, while you're alive. The next morning, Mitchell took me to see an attorney named Barbara Hendricks. Her office was on Drayton Street, in one of those old brick buildings with tall windows and creaking floors. Barbara was in her early 60s, with short silver hair and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She had a reputation in Savannah for being relentless. Barracuda Barbara, the locals called her, though never to her face. I laid everything on her desk, the bank statements, the screenshots, the emails, the caterer's message about my wake. Barbara read through it all without saying a word. When she finished, she took off her glasses, looked at me, and said, Mrs. Voss, your daughter hasn't just been taking advantage of you. Based on what I'm seeing here, she may have committed elder financial abuse under Georgia law. And this email about a memorial service while you're alive, that suggests she's been making fraudulent representations to third parties, possibly to position herself for early access to your estate. She explained that in Georgia, financial exploitation of an elderly person is a serious offense. If we could demonstrate a pattern of deception, undue influence, and misappropriation of funds, we could pursue both civil recovery and criminal referral. She asked if I wanted to proceed. I looked at Mitchell. He nodded. I looked back at Barbara Hendricks and said, Yes, I want every penny back. Barbara moved fast. She brought in a forensic accountant named David Chen, a quiet man with rimless glasses who could trace money the way a bloodhound follows a scent. David pulled Vanessa and Derek's public financial records. What he found made me sick. In the same months Vanessa had been crying at my kitchen table about mortgage payments and braces and roof leaks, she and Derek had taken a 7-day cruise to the Bahamas. They'd put a deposit on a vacation condo in Hilton Head. They'd bought a $28,000 boat. A boat. While I was eating soft bread because I couldn't afford dental crowns. David also discovered that Vanessa had opened a bank account in my name, without my knowledge, at a credit union across town. She'd been funneling small amounts from my primary account into it using an old checkbook she must have taken from my desk drawer. Over 18 months, she'd siphoned an additional $14,600. Money I hadn't even noticed was missing because the amounts were small. $200 here, $350 there, timed perfectly around my regular withdrawals, so the balance never looked dramatically wrong. The total, when David was finished, was $137,000. Barbara also hired a private investigator named Detective Angela Reyes, a former Chatham County Sheriff's deputy. Detective Reyes confirmed that Vanessa had told at least 4 other people that I was terminally ill. She told our neighbor, Mrs. Frances Tate, that I had late-stage liver cancer. She told Gerald's brother, Uncle Howard, in Tennessee that I had weeks, maybe days. She told 2 of my cousins in Virginia that the family reunion was a final goodbye. and she'd begun inquiring about the probate process with a paralegal at a different law firm, asking how quickly assets could be distributed after the passing. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was building a narrative. She was constructing a world in which I was already gone, so that when the time came, no one would question where the money went. I remember the evening I sat in my living room and looked at the stack of evidence on my coffee table. The forensic report, the investigators' findings, the screenshots of Vanessa's social media, pictures of her and Derek on the boat, toasting champagne, grinning at the camera while I sat at home rationing my grocery budget. I looked at Gerald's photograph on the mantel, and I whispered, "I see her now, Gerald. I finally see her." The confrontation came on February 3rd, 2024. I didn't plan it. Vanessa stopped by my house unannounced, the way she sometimes did, usually when she wanted something. She walked in through the back door without knocking, set her purse on the counter and said, "Hey, Mama, just checking in on you. How are you feeling?" There was something in her voice, a softness, a carefulness, like she was speaking to someone fragile, someone who might break, someone who might die. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my tea. I looked at her and said, "Vanessa, sit down." She blinked, surprised by my tone, but she sat. I slid the printed email across the table, the one from Raoul at Southern Comforts Catering, the one that mentioned the wake. "What is this?" I asked. Vanessa's face went white, not slowly, all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. "Mama, I can explain." "Can you?" I said. "Can you explain why a caterer thinks I'm dead? Can you explain why Uncle Howard called Mitchell last week in tears because he thinks I have liver cancer? Can you explain the boat, Vanessa? The cruise? The condo in Hilton Head?" Her mouth opened and closed. Her eyes darted toward the door. Then the tears came, right on schedule. "Mama, you don't understand. Derek is the one who, it was his idea. I didn't want to. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" My voice didn't rise. It went lower, quieter. "You stole $137,000 from me, Vanessa. You told people I was dying. You planned my wake. That's not protection. That's predation." Vanessa stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Her face shifted. The tears dried up like they'd never been real, and maybe they never were. "You know what, Mama? You have no idea what it's like. You sit here in this house with your roses and your dead husband's chair and your little savings account, and you think you're better than everyone. Dad left you everything, everything. And what about me? What about what I need?" I stared at her. I said, "Your father left me what we earned together over 44 years of marriage, and I gave you $137,000 of it because you lied to me. Get out of my house." "You'll regret this," she said. Her voice was hard now, stripped of all pretense. "I'll have you declared incompetent. I'll tell the court you're senile. I'll get power of attorney, and there won't be a thing you can do about it." "Get out," I said again. She grabbed her purse and left through the back door. She slammed it so hard the picture of Gerald on the wall rattled. I sat there for a long time after she left. My hands were trembling, but my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in years. I picked up the phone and called Barbara Hendricks. "She threatened to have me declared incompetent." I said, "File everything, tomorrow." And Barbara did. What followed was one of the most painful months of my life, but also one of the most necessary. Vanessa, true to her word, tried to rally the family against me. She called Uncle Howard in Tennessee and told him I'd lost my mind and was making wild accusations. She posted on Facebook that I was suffering from dementia and that she was heartbroken about my decline. She called 2 of my neighbors and told them I'd become paranoid and confused. But Barbara Hendricks had anticipated all of this. On her advice, I'd already seen Dr. Anand Patel for a full cognitive evaluation. He administered the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and I scored 29 out of 30. He wrote a letter stating that I was cognitively sharp, fully oriented, and entirely capable of managing my own affairs. Barbara also had me evaluated by a psychologist, Dr. Lillian Truong, who confirmed the same thing in a detailed written report. When Vanessa's attorney, a young man named Kyle Brennan, who looked like he'd graduated law school the previous Tuesday, filed a petition for emergency guardianship, Barbara was ready. She walked into the hearing with my medical evaluations, my financial records, the forensic accountant's report, the private investigator's findings, and a 12-page brief that outlined every lie Vanessa had told. The guardianship petition was denied in under 40 minutes. Judge Raymond Okafor looked at Vanessa from the bench and said, "Mrs. Caldwell, this court does not appreciate having its time wasted. Your mother appears more competent than most people who walk through these doors. Your petition is denied with prejudice." Vanessa's attorney looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. But the real case was still ahead. The civil suit was filed on February 28, 2024, in Chatham County Superior Court. Barbara Hendricks named both Vanessa Marie Caldwell and Derek James Caldwell as defendants. The complaint alleged financial exploitation of an elderly person, fraud, conversion of assets, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and unjust enrichment. We sought full restitution of the $137,000, plus punitive damages. Barbara also filed a criminal referral with the Chatham County District Attorney's Office. An assistant DA named Monica Lawson took an interest in the case. She'd been building a unit focused on elder financial abuse, and my case, she told Barbara, was textbook. The trial was set for June 10th, 2024. I dreaded it, but I also needed it. The morning of the trial, I put on the green dress from my 40th anniversary photograph. It still fit. I wore Gerald's wedding band on a chain around my neck, the way I had since the day he died. Mitchell flew in from Portland and sat beside me in the courtroom. My neighbor, Frances Tate, came too. So did 3 women from my book club and a retired colleague from the accounting firm, a woman named Dolores Whitfield, who'd known me for 30 years and insisted on being there. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor of the Chatham County Courthouse. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, American flag behind the bench. Judge Patricia Morrison presided. She was a tall woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and no tolerance for nonsense. She'd been on the bench for 22 years. Vanessa and Derek sat on the other side of the aisle. Vanessa wore a black dress, as if she were attending a funeral. Derek wore his monogrammed shirt. Their attorney, Kyle Brennan, had brought a thick binder that he kept opening and closing nervously. Barbara Hendricks opened with a calm, devastating summary. She described a daughter who had systematically drained her elderly mother's savings through a pattern of lies, emotional manipulation, and outright fraud. She described the fake bank account, the siphoned funds, the fabricated emergencies, the cruise, the boat, the condo, and then she described the emails to the caterer, the wake that was planned for a living woman. David Chen, the forensic accountant, testified for nearly 2 hours. He walked the court through every transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal. He showed bank records proving that in the same month, Vanessa had asked me for $20,000 for emergencies. She and Derek had spent $11,000 on a Caribbean cruise. He showed that the roof leak Vanessa had cited was never repaired because it never existed. He showed the unauthorized account at the credit union and the systematic transfers. Detective Angela Reyes testified about her investigation. She played a recorded phone call between Vanessa and Uncle Howard, in which Vanessa described in detail my supposed terminal illness. She read aloud the emails to the caterer. She presented printed social media posts where Vanessa had solicited sympathy and, in 2 instances, donations for my end-of-life care from distant relatives. When it was Vanessa's turn to take the stand, She tried the tears again. She said she'd been overwhelmed and made mistakes. She said Derek had pressured her. She said she'd always intended to pay the money back. But under cross-examination, Barbara Hendricks took her apart piece by piece. Mrs. Caldwell, you told Raoul at Southern Comforts Catering that your mother was terminally ill. Was that true? I was confused about her condition. Confused? Your mother scored 29 out of 30 on a cognitive assessment. Her physician says she's in good health. Were you confused, or were you lying? Vanessa didn't answer. Mrs. Caldwell, you opened a bank account in your mother's name without her knowledge. You transferred $14,600 into it. Did your mother authorize those transfers? She knew about the account. She did not. We have her sworn testimony and the bank's records confirming she had no knowledge of this account. Did you forge her signature on the application? Kyle Brennan objected. Judge Morrison overruled him. Vanessa looked at the table. I just needed help, she whispered. You needed help, Barbara repeated. So you stole $137,000 from a 70-year-old widow and told people she was dead. That's your definition of needing help? The courtroom was silent. Derek took the stand after Vanessa. He was worse. He tried to be charming, and it backfired spectacularly. He told Judge Morrison that he and Vanessa had always been transparent with me about their finances. Barbara presented the text messages where Derek had told me the $15,000 loan would be repaid in 90 days. She showed bank records proving it never was. She showed the boat purchase receipt, dated 3 weeks after he'd borrowed the money. Judge Morrison asked Derek directly, Mr. Caldwell, did you ever intend to repay Mrs. Voss? Derek hesitated too long. We always meant to, Your Honor. Things just got complicated. Things got complicated, Judge Morrison repeated. I see. The closing arguments took less than an hour. Judge Morrison didn't need long to deliberate. She returned with her ruling the following afternoon, June 11th, at 2:15 p.m. This court finds, she said, that Vanessa Marie Caldwell and Derek James Caldwell engage in a systematic pattern of financial exploitation targeting an elderly family member. The defendants obtained funds through deception, emotional manipulation, and fraudulent misrepresentation. The defendants further engaged in identity fraud by opening an unauthorized account in the plaintiff's name. And the defendants made false statements to multiple third parties regarding the plaintiff's health status, apparently in preparation for accessing her estate prematurely. She ordered full restitution of $137,000. She awarded an additional $65,000 in punitive damages. She ordered Vanessa and Derek to pay all of my legal fees, which totaled $28,000, and she referred the case to the district attorney's office with a recommendation for criminal prosecution. Total judgment, $230,000. Vanessa was crying again when the judgment was read. This time, I think the tears were real. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Vanessa and Derek didn't have $230,000. They didn't have anything close. Barbara Hendricks pursued asset seizure immediately. The court ordered the sale of the vacation condo in Hilton Head, which netted $87,000 after fees. The boat was sold at auction for $19,000. Their primary residence in Savannah was encumbered with liens, and when the remaining judgment balance wasn't satisfied within 60 days, Barbara moved to force the sale of the house too. Derek, it turned out, had been hiding debts of his own. When the full financial picture came to light during the enforcement proceedings, Vanessa discovered that Derek had been carrying over $90,000 in personal credit card debt that he'd never told her about. The money she'd taken from me hadn't even covered their real problems. It had just been swallowed by Derek's lifestyle. The boat, the cruise, the clothes, the dinners, the image he so desperately wanted to project. Vanessa filed for divorce on August 2nd, 2024. Derek didn't contest it. He moved to Jacksonville, Florida, where his brother had a spare room. The house was sold in September. After the mortgage was paid and the remaining judgment was satisfied, Vanessa was left with almost nothing. The criminal case moved forward in October. Assistant DA Monica Lawson charged Vanessa with 1 count of financial exploitation of an elderly person, a felony in Georgia, and 1 count of identity fraud for the unauthorized bank account. Derek was charged with conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. Vanessa pled guilty in November as part of a plea agreement. She received 5 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a permanent felony on her record. Derek, who fought the charges, was convicted at trial in January of 2025. He received 3 years of probation and a fine of $15,000. Lily, Vanessa's 16-year-old, called me the week after the civil trial. Her voice was thin and shaky. "Grandma," she said, "I didn't know. I didn't know what Mom was doing. I'm so sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart," I told her. "None of this was your doing." "Can I still come see you?" she asked. "You can come see me any time," I said. "You and Oliver both. My door's always open." And it was. It still is. Lily comes over most Saturdays now. She helps me in the garden. Oliver comes when his school schedule allows. They're good kids. They didn't choose their parents' sins. Vanessa, I see occasionally. She moved into a small apartment near Victory Drive. She works as a receptionist at a dental clinic. The irony of that is not lost on me, considering I couldn't afford my own dental work because of what she took. The last time I saw her was in January of this year, at a grocery store on Abercorn Street. She was in the cereal aisle. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Older. She saw me and stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Mama, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long time. I said, "I believe you mean that, Vanessa, but meaning it doesn't undo it. I hope you find a way to build something honest. For Lily's sake, for Oliver's sake, and for your own." I didn't hug her. I didn't invite her over. I turned my cart and walked to the checkout. I felt nothing, not triumph, not pity, just quiet certainty that justice had been served and that I had done what needed to be done. With the money recovered and the punitive damages on top of it, I was in a better financial position than I'd been in years. The first thing I did was go to the dentist. Dr. William Nakamura fixed both crowns and told me my teeth were going to be just fine. I paid in full. I set aside $50,000 in a trust for Lily and Oliver's college education. Mitchell helped me set it up so that Vanessa has no access to it whatsoever. The money is managed by a fiduciary, a woman named Andrea Collins, who sends me quarterly reports. In September, I took a trip, my first real vacation in 7 years. I flew to Charleston, South Carolina, and spent 5 days walking along the waterfront, eating shrimp and grits at every restaurant I could find, and reading novels on a bench overlooking the harbor. On the 3rd day, a woman sitting next to me said, "You look so peaceful. You must be retired and loving it." I laughed and said, "I'm 70 years old, and I've never felt more free." When I came back to Savannah, I joined a support group for elderly victims of financial abuse. It's run by a nonprofit called Elder Shield Foundation, and they meet every other Tuesday at the community center on Bull Street. There are 12 of us in the group. Some were exploited by children, some by caregivers, some by strangers. But all of us understand the specific shame of being taken advantage of by someone you trusted. I don't feel that shame anymore, but I remember it, and I use that memory to help others. I also started volunteering with the Chatham County DA's office as a victim advocate. Monica Lawson, the assistant DA who handled my case, asked if I'd be willing to speak to other elderly victims who were afraid to come forward. I said yes without hesitation. I've talked to 11 people so far. 6 of them have decided to pursue their cases. That's 6 people who might have stayed silent, who might have kept swallowing the poison if someone hadn't told them it was okay to fight back. My friend Dolores Whitfield told me last month that I look 10 years younger. She said, "Eleanor, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I told her what I'm doing is simple. I'm telling the truth. I'm tending my roses. I'm calling Mitchell every Sunday. I'm hugging my grandchildren. And I'm refusing, absolutely refusing to be anyone's ghost while I'm still breathing. Gerald's rocking chair still sits on the porch. I still drink my coffee out there every morning. I still talk to him about the weather, about the birds, about what I watched on television. But now I also tell him about the trial, about the verdict, about the money,